Hello, welcome to my channel, Z the Martian, where I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Now, today, I figured, why not make a video on this? Because it was really just going through my thoughts, and it was just something I couldn't help wondering while watching part 6 of JoJo's. As many of you guys know, part 6 of JoJo's has already ended, and I don't think anyone really knows when or if a part 7 will be released, but I did try and search Reddits and other forums for this topic, and it didn't seem like anyone else has ever talked about it when I cover on my channel. So my initial thought when doing this is Emporio and his stand burning down the house, which apparently there's a theory on that burning down the house is not his stand, but his mother's, which I don't particularly prescribe to that theory. But again, going back to the main topic, with Emporio, he's so young, and with his stand so really underdeveloped compared to everyone else's in the part, I really just couldn't help but think, what if he was older? What if he was around Jolene's age and significantly stronger, having developed his stand a lot further? Now, there are two routes I was thinking about going with this. There's the first route, which is him having the same burning down the house, as in he can only control ghost objects that have been burned down, but expanding the range. So what would have been interesting is if during part 6, he was able to just kind of summon any object that was burned down from around the world, expand the range, similar to Bohemian Rhapsody had a global range. And then there's also the route where it's not limited to objects that have been burned down. Now, there is a little bit of controversy on whether his stand only affects objects that have been burned down or not, even though it's in the name a little bit. But that's neither here nor there. But with that, we can think about two things in correlation to that. And that would be restricting the stand to only objects. Because we already have in that part Underworld, which can unearth past events. So we can't have Emporio summoning past events or ghost events, as it would be, and ghost people in the sense of Limp Bizkit, which we saw was able to do that. So we can't have burning down the house with this older Emporio significantly trespassing on either of these territories. Just limit him to objects. And with that, you still can get a lot if you were to say, instead of it just being objects that were burned down, it was objects that have been destroyed. Now, it seems like it would be limited based on area. And that would be the most interesting part of this, is if Araki had taken this part to other areas where burning down the house would be more useful. Let's say, since Araki's main theme was giving everyone the peace of not having the Joestar legacy and having to battle enemies for us, what if Enrico Pucci had gone over, instead of to the Kennedy Space Center, had somehow managed to go over to, and this is just spitballing here at this point, had gone over to the Joestar mansion instead, and Emporio used his ability to resurrect the mansion. That would have been a nice last scene, I guess you could say, or a last callback to the first part of JoJo, to see the Joestar mansion rebuilt, or how I say manifested, since it was already burned down. And a good question will be, would that give him access to a stone mask at the same time? Which makes that aspect even more interesting, as if Araki had taken it back to that place where burning down the house would have been a lot more interesting and versatile in its application of its ability. So, imagine Pucci's getting there, he's powering up all that, and then Emporio had already used his ability to resurrect the Joestar mansion, and as Pucci is powering up, he sees a stone mask underneath one of the tables, and he accidentally activates it since they've all been battling with who's ever, and he gets turned into a vampire. And I don't think anyone in that part has a familiarity. Maybe Jotaro does. Maybe. Because if I'm not mistaken, he never saw a stone mask directly. He's fought vampires, but he's never seen a stone mask directly. So it would have been interesting to see everyone's reaction, if they had even been paying attention, because Pucci would also be transforming in that moment. Seeing Emporio get turned into a vampire. And that would allow for a lot more dynamic and interesting fight scene with the final of them. And taking it all the way back to the Joestar Mansion would have probably also allowed Jotaro to get the time necessary to get the other stand users who I'm thinking about to get there. In other words, Josuke and Giorno, because that flight, even with Sea Moon, would have taken Pucci a while to get there, and would have allowed them to gather the kind of necessary resources. So let's say Josuke shows up with Okuyasu and Giorno shows up with Mista. That would have been a very interesting, that would have been a way more interesting fight scene than what we got. Not to say that the fight scene that we got wasn't interesting enough already, but it would have been a lot more interesting to see if Pucci could somehow counter these abilities that he was presented with. It would have been a crazy fight and it would have been just very entertaining to watch. Like imagine Araki writes it, oh yeah, like GR puts him in the infinite death loop and somehow Pucci uses Made in Heaven to accelerate past all these deaths in like an instant to return back to reality. That would have been crazy. Just it would have been just fun to watch and just again a whole lot more interesting of a fight scene to really let like Pucci let loose and let everyone else let loose. Naturally, he would have targeted Josuke first as the healer, even with Anastasia there. It wouldn't have really benefited him to target Anastasia first and would allow Anastasia to help Jotaro more, Angeline more, as they fought Pucci. Again, just a whole lot more interesting dynamic that would have happened in that fight had we gone that route. But I feel like I'm digressing. And would a vampire Emporio even help the fight? Well, maybe. It's hard to say he wouldn't, really. Well, it's not hard to say he wouldn't, because Man in Heaven is still a lot faster. But with Emporio being a vampire, he would have been access to certain abilities that might have been helpful in him trapping Pucci in the first place. Because we already saw at the end he got heavy weather. Now imagine Emporio if he had gotten heavy weather with the vampire abilities and say laser-eyed him, even though we all know they weren't lasers, but laser-eyed him like Dio once did when he cut through that entire castle as heavy weather was poisoning him. That would have been a very interesting way to like end the series back with like the original creation of the vampires that Araki relied on for his first part. Like, oh, we've gone all the way back, like in a circle. Like we've hit all the way back to the beginning. Then we have, like I said earlier, we have the other route of Emporio just summoning whatever has been burned down from around the world. We expand the range of the stand because let's say his current range is, as it is, but if he had gotten older, like if he was around Jolene's age, his range would have expanded. That would have been particularly interesting to see him summon objects from around the world that have been burned down. And would have allowed for him to be a lot more of a defensive player because you could really just go with just about any wall or literally a wall. Any wall or building to really just summon up out of the middle of nowhere and protect Jolene and Hermes if he had needed to. Now, another interesting route this could have gone, instead of making Emporio older so that his stand was more developed and matured, probably has invisible stand manifestation in that theory or idea, and which goes one of two ways, which is he can summon ghost objects of anything that's been burned down from around the globe, kind of giving him that global range like that Bohemian Rhapsody has. Or option B, which was making his stand able to summon ghost objects of whatever's just been destroyed in general, not just things that have been burned down. Another interesting route would have been Emporio's mother's stand being Limp Bizkit and him accepting that stand. Now we've seen before that familial stands can be very similar to each other. So we saw it with Jonathan and Joseph, like that they both have very vine appearing stands that can divine things. So it would have been very interesting if his mother was Ghost People, Ghost Zombie technically, but that's neither here nor there. And Emporio's stand was just Ghost Objects. And you could see like a definite correlation between those two in the ghost summoning theme. But it would have been interesting if after they defeated the Limp Bizkit user, if Emporio's mother's will was engraved enough in her stand disc to allow him to use it along with burning down the house. Again, another interesting final fight scenario where, say, at the Space Center where Pucci was at, Emporio was able to summon the ghosts of FF and Weather to help them fight off Pucci along with their stand powers, naturally, because it wouldn't be very interesting if they didn't have their stand power. Now, we don't really know if Limp Bizkit can summon stand users along with their stand power in regards to the deceased ones, because we've never really seen him summon a stand user. But let's say in this, give it that creative liberty of he's able to do that and they're not like zombified. And let's say the person that Pucci gave Limp Bizkit to was just the reason why his were zombified, like lacked intelligence that they had in life was because of his like personality. That would have been very interesting concept to see brought to fruition. The only reason that they were zombifying this aggressive in the first place was because of the user. And that if the user was docile or nice like Emporio was, then they would have like retained their natural intelligence and qualities. It also would have been interesting to see Emporio if he had summoned not only those two, but say some of the dead stand users that they defeated in that part to their cause. Because it would have been Pucci's, the people that he manipulated, all coming back to really full circle and kind of be like, we can now see how Pucci's plans have been turned against him. But that just would have been interesting to me. Well, that's really all I have to say on the topic. Hopefully someone more seasoned in talking about JoJo's content like X-Forts or Hamon Beats or Metas can pick up this topic and maybe make their own video on it. I think it was interesting of an idea. And again, I just hadn't seen anyone else really talk about it. I know I made this video very close to Christmas, so who knows how many people are going to be able to see this. And I haven't posted it on YouTube in a long time. So I don't know how the algorithm is going to spread this or pick it up. But in any case, I hope everyone has a happy holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, all that. And I'll see you all later. Peace.